Councillor Whitehead and Farr to update the city's property standards, include more health and safety issues tenants face. In December 2020, a motion was passed unanimously at the Emergency Community Service Committee for staff to report back on renovictions and what other jurisdictions have done and what the City of Hamilton can do to mitigate impact to tenants. Since January 2021, ACORN leaders have met councillors and city staff to discuss municipal powers and tools to restrict renovictions and the urgency for the city to act. The staff report, Tenant Defense Fund, lacks the bold action Hamilton tenants and allies were counting on. ACORN Hamilton urges for the City of Hamilton and council and staff to be leaders on this issue and commit to finding and implementing municipal policy to restrict renovictions. Now I'm going to pass to Darlene to speak more about the issue of renovictions in Hamilton.
Thanks, Marnie. As a tenant facing renoviction myself, low income and vulnerable Hamilton residents cannot afford to be renovicted. Hamilton is in a housing crisis, and renoviction is a significant driver of unit turnovers. Under the guise of major renovation, landlords are evicting or forcing tenants out. The goal is to displace low and moderate income tenants who are paying below market rents. Vacated units are renovated and re-rented at a much higher rate. Despite being in the global pandemic, landlords have continued to use this practice and tactics this past year. ACORN filed a Freedom of Information request with the Landlord and Tenant Board for evictions filed in 2020. 33 N13s were filed in Hamilton, but this only captures situations where tenants didn't move out by the move-out date or take an early buyout offer. With the market rent for a one-bedroom starting at $13.75 and affordable rent is said to be 30% of a person's income, renters that are on pension, ODSP, OW, EI, or working minimum wage jobs cannot afford to lose their apartments. While we know we need to build and repair social housing in Hamilton, we must also do everything to keep individuals and families that are currently housed in their homes. As my building tenants are standing their ground as we await a hearing from the Landlord and Tenant Board, but many low-income and vulnerable tenants do not know their rights and fall to the pressure of their landlord. Imagine you're living in an affordable Hamilton apartment for many years, like I am, 17 years, and one day your landlord sells the building to a company you have never heard of. Maybe it will be good. Your landlord was neglecting the building, but the new landlord also doesn't do repairs and start offering tenants money to move out. They warn of major renovations coming and move now before all the noise starts. Move now before all the dust and noise starts, but you want to stick it out. But before long, they give you an eviction notice outlining repairs that you didn't know needed to be done, and your apartment is livable, and the work that the landlord needs to do doesn't require you to move out for 10 or 12 months. As a city, we need to protect tenants and existing affordable units. Renovictions has major impacts on Hamilton's low to moderate income communities. Displacement of low income and vulnerable residents. It destroys existing stock of market affordable housing, dries up rents in the neighborhood, housing instability for tenants, increases demands for social housing, incentivizes landlords to deliberately let their buildings fall in disrepair, increasing pressure on social and health services, and increases the homelessness. Now I'll pass it back to Dayna to go over recommendations for the city to move forward.
Thanks, Darlene. I'm going to go over ACORN's recommendations for the city to move forward on this issue. Our first recommendation is that the city needs to investigate all available municipal tools and powers to restrict renoviction. ACORN has highlighted the groundbreaking anti-renoviction policy passed in New Westminster, BC, and similarities in provincial legislation. In British Columbia, municipalities also cannot withhold building permits. Through the tool of licensing, New Westminster was able to put conditions in place to restrict renoviction and ensure tenants were protected if landlords pursued vacancy for renovations. The report states staff propose to raise and evaluate this option as part of the ongoing licensing review. ACORN urges the Emergency and Community Services Committee to initiate a comprehensive study on the feasibility of a citywide landlord licensing program to restrict renoviction and ensure landlords keep their properties in good repair. Number 2, we'd like to see the Tenant Defense Fund expanded and made permanent. ACORN supports expanding the Tenant Defense Fund to cover N13 eviction applications, but more consultation is needed with the Hamilton Community Legal Clinic and ACORN to ensure the program is successful. Based on the success of the Toronto Tenant Defense Fund and acknowledgement that the Hamilton's Tenant Defense Fund pilot of $50,000 was underutilized, ACORN proposes following in the steps of the Toronto model. In addition to the grant amount of $2,500 recommended in the staff report for legal representation, Hamilton's fund needs to include a grant for hiring other experts to support a dispute or application at the Landlord and Tenant Board. In Toronto, their maximum is $10,000. The success of the Toronto Tenant Defense Fund is related to their robust outreach and support staff program. A tenant rights agency called the Federation of Metro Tenants Association works with the city to facilitate the fund. The feasibility of an equivalent program and tenant hotline for Hamilton's TDF needs to be reassessed. 3, implement a proactive tenant education program to reach tenants at risk of displacement. The staff report states staff will work with the building division and the licensing and bylaw services division to determine all reasonable and proactive opportunities to inform and educate in circumstances where there is a potential for tenant displacement. The city needs to identify opportunities for proactive tenant education, and ACORN proposes when a building changes ownership, reports from community members or tenant groups of buyouts or N13 notices, and when the city receives a building permit application for a multi-residential property. Tenant education should include sharing contact info for the Tenant Defense Fund, Property Standards Bylaw, their city councilor, and the Hamilton Community Legal Clinic, Housing Help Center, ACORN Tenant Union, and general tenant rights regarding displacement. Since the city does not currently have proactive bylaw enforcement, properties that trigger tenant education should also be visited by bylaw to ensure property standards are being enforced, recognizing that landlords who are seeking to displace tenants are likely not maintaining suites, common areas, and grounds. As a tenant whose landlord also pressured tenants to accept a buyout to move out in 2020, I know what tenants are going through. At my building, we held tenant meetings and direct action. My neighbors learned their rights, but because of the high pressure tactics and misleading information from the landlord, many tenants felt like they had no choice but to accept the money and move. It never got to an N13 eviction part, but the landlord continues to pick on vulnerable tenants and offer buyouts. We need citywide policy to restrict renovation and these tactics in the first place. ACORN looks forward to continuing to work with council, city staff, and community partners on these important issues. Now, at this time, we can take any questions. Sorry, any question from the press? I should have specified that. The chat is open if you'd like to add your questions in. Okay, so the question we got was, were you hoping to see a deeper analysis of the new Westminster system in this report? I definitely believe that that is something that we were looking forward to. ACORN has taken it apart in meetings with New Westminster staff, city staff, into looking at how they implemented the program. And it was definitely kind of blowing to not see that reflected in the report like we were hoping, because we know that the landlord licensing program in New Westminster has definitely assisted in a lot less renovictions happening, and it's been a successful program so far. Also, New Westminster was the first city in Canada to take action as a municipality. So I think it was definitely important for us to see that reflected in the report, because we want to follow the lead, and we also want to have other jurisdictions see what we're doing and have them also follow the lead. Okay, in the chat we have just I think that working people from all backgrounds need to join with ACORN across Canada to give them more strength against corrupt governments and landlords' property management. Lisa, just to sort of add to what you're saying, ACORN is for anybody. I think it's important that there's strength in numbers. It doesn't matter what type of income you have, whether you're low to moderate, you could have a higher income. You're right. I think that more people across Canada should join our cause. It's really important that you know, people stick together and let our governments know that, you know, we're not going away. And then if there's any other questions from the press, if you want to just let us know now. Okay. The question, how confident are you that policies like New West's will be part of a local licensing system if they can't be tackled through the Ontario Building Code? So, I mean, ACORN is going to keep pushing for that to be evaluated. You know, we're hoping that we can get the puzzle pieces together and have that work out. We believe the city has the power to act as a city, and they have the power to make this a reality. Yeah. Unfortunately, I have to step out because I have to go to the emergency meeting there. So if I think we can follow up with the press after the committee meeting, if that's all right. You all have Olivia's information. So if you have any other questions to